Having your heart right towards your child is probably the most important thing you can do when it comes to your parenting. Right up beside it, though, is how you communicate. And today we're going to share with you a couple of communication wins that we've been having in our family. G'day, welcome to the Happy Families podcast. So good to have you along. Real parenting solutions every day. This is Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. We are Justin and Kylie Coulson. Hun, just before we get into today's pod, got an email the other day from a 15-year-old who said, don't mention my name, don't tell anyone even what state I'm from. But he really wanted me to know some stuff about how the work that we're doing is impacting not just parents, but teenagers. You ready for this?
Okay. I'm intrigued.
I almost told you what this teenager's name was, but I'm just going to read the email. I'm a 15-year-old, and I totally agree with what you're saying about social media. I've had apps like Snapchat and Instagram for 2 years, and honestly, I regret it. How often do you hear 15-year-olds say that they regret their screen usage? You know what a more interesting conversation is? How often do you hear 15-year-olds or anyone say, I'm really glad I've got this. It's making a positive difference in my life. Anyway, this person says, I regret it. It's addictive, wastes time. I dropped grades in school because of social media and it's messed with mental health. One of my mates wasn't meant to get Instagram until 16, but he just installed it anyway. Shows how easy it is for teens to ignore their parents and get sucked in. I found I got Instagram due to feeling like I was missing out with all my mates having it. Giving your kids social media is like handing them a weapon. It's also killing real life confidence. I've lost confidence talking to girls in a normal conversation. It's like I have social anxiety and I know 100% I don't have it, as I'm a really confident person who's very popular at school. And because of all the fake stuff online, especially from guys like Andrew Tate, I've lost a lot of confidence. But I've started turning things around. People like David Goggins help me focus and build discipline. Thanks for your time. Please don't say where I'm from or my name. Really appreciate what you do. Cheers. And Kylie, I just thought it's worth sharing it because sometimes as parents, we feel like we are banging our head against the wall, especially with teens and social media. And then you get a 15-year-old who sends an email like that.
If only more of them were like that.
Yeah, we've had this experiment in our home for the last 3 weeks with our 15-year-old, and the other day she accidentally slipped up and said that not having a phone for the last few weeks has been one of the best things that's happened to her.
Did she now?
She kind of didn't mean to say it. She was talking to her sisters and it just kind of came out of her mouth. And then she looked at me and went, oh, and put her hand over her mouth and said, I didn't really mean it like that. I was like, really? I think I heard something really cool there.
That's awesome.
All right. It's I'll Do Better Tomorrow. This is where we have a look at what's happened in the last week. We talk about what's working and what's not working. I've got a big success story today. What about you?
I think I'm going to chalk my one up to success too.
Okay. Well, you're first. Ladies before gents, off you go.
Oh, you're so kind.
Well, I read an article the other day on one of those news websites and they were making the argument that chivalry has died.
Chivalry has died.
Yeah. I mean, some people are saying that chivalry was just sort of some benevolent sexism or whatever. I don't care. You go first.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's hear the story.
So the other day I had a consult with Emily's OT and we were talking about some of the challenges we've been experiencing over the last little while, especially within the homeschooling space, and trying to work out how I can be more supportive of her.
Worth highlighting for those who are new to the pod, Emily is our youngest. She is 11 and being homeschooled.
And what frustrates me more times than not when we engage with professionals is that more times than not, they actually don't share anything new, but they bring to the forefront things that we already know.
Yeah.
And it feels frustrating because you're spending this money so that somebody can tell you something that you already know.
I just want the pill. I want the secret sauce. I want the silver bullet.
And as we were talking, we were discussing bedtime because this has been a really, really big struggle with Emily. She is such an engaged kid and absolutely loves working on different little projects that bedtime seems like such a bane in her existence. She just doesn't have a desire to go to bed.
Yeah.
She doesn't, and she doesn't show any signs of being tired or frustrated until you ask her to go to bed.
Yeah, so she's not playing up. She's not being rambunctious or obnoxious. She's not doing anything wrong. She's just reading or doing Lego or painting or she's being creative and productive. Like she's always doing a good thing when you say, hey, kiddo, time for bed. It's getting late.
And it's just, it it causes friction. Not all the time, but from time to time, it causes significant friction.
There are a couple of things that make it hard. I know I'm interrupting, but it's worth highlighting why this is such a challenge. Number one, I travel a lot. So your capacity to be fully available is reduced because I'm often not home. And so there's inconsistency in routine. Number two, she's the youngest of 6 girls. So all of her sisters are in their mid to late teens and beyond. And they're all staying up way later than she's supposed to stay up as an 11-year-old. So it's really easy for her to just sort of hang out with everybody else and stay.
Well, and there's almost 5 years between her and her next sister.
Yeah, so 4.5 years.
She's young by a long stretch. And so she's watching what everyone else is able to do, and she just doesn't understand why she can't be a part of it. Not that she wants to be a part of what they're doing. She just wants to continue doing what she's doing. And if they're allowed to do it, why can't I?
Yeah, I want to be up. Yeah.
She has a real thing with social justice, and right now she doesn't feel like it's in her best interest to go to bed when everyone else gets to have an extra few hours of time to work with the things that they love. But as we talked, it just occurred to me, and it wasn't so much that she told me, it was that as we discussed it and just talked through things, she actually said when she was younger, what worked with Emily? And I thought about it, and I thought about our circumstances, which were very different to what we're dealing with now. And I said, well, we'd usually dim the lights. I'd put some oils on her. The diffuser would come out. We'd sing some songs. We'd read some stories. Obviously, there was a bath in there, like all of the things.
Bit of soft music or a song together or whatever.
And as I said that, it was like, oh, yeah, we don't do any of that anymore. Like literally, we don't do any of that anymore.
Gone. Yep.
And part of that is because the house is a busy house. There are so many moving parts all the time, and she kind of just gets dragged along with it all, which she's really happy to be dragged along. But as we continued the discussion, I just thought, you know what? I probably need to refocus on what a structured bedtime would look like for her to help her through this process. And so a few days later, I sat down with Emily and we had a conversation. And I explained to her that I'd been speaking with her OT, and we'd had a conversation about some of the struggles we were having at home. And one of them was bedtime. And I said, how do you feel about bedtime? And she said, I just think it's really unnecessary.
Bedtime is unnecessary.
I said, yeah, you really don't like going to bed, do you? And she said, no, Mum, I'm not tired. She's like, I'm not tired. And I'm like, yeah, I know. You could read. Like, put a book in front of me and I'll read for about, I don't know, half a page. And I'm gone. She can read pages, like chapters, just keeps going. So as we talked about things, I said, do you remember some of the things we used to do when you were little? And so she listed them, all of them. And she said, oh, yeah, I really liked it when we did that. And so I said to her, do you think maybe we could have a discussion around what bedtime would look like? What time do you think you should go to bed? This is going to blow you away.
What did she say?
She told me that she should be lights out and asleep by 8:30.
That's perfectly reasonable. But if you tell her that at 8:30,
yes,
it's World War III.
I looked at her and I was like, you think that's a really fair time to go to bed? And she said, yeah, it is. But once I'm 12, it needs to go to 9.
Right. Okay. All right.
And I said, okay, so if 8:30 is lights out, what other things do you like to do before you go to bed? And there was an acknowledgement. She loves to read. And so I said, okay, so if you're going to read, you usually would love to have a good half an hour. So you actually need to be in bed by 8 o'clock. And I said, but to get to that point, what do we need to do? And so she listed a few things that she needed to do. And so we talked through it. By the end of it, we had, number one, total compliance. She was 100% engaged
I would go beyond that. This is not about compliance. This is about commitment. You've moved from compulsion in compliance to commitment to compliance.
Even down to we do all in after dinner.
So for those of you who have missed the memo, all in is we finish dinner and everyone comes into the kitchen and we're all in the kitchen tidying things up and resetting the house for the morning.
And so I just said, in relation to all in, what job would you like to do? I said, do you want to pack away the table? And she said, no, because I've done that in the past and it's a really quick job and then everyone gets me in trouble because they're still doing work and I don't have to. She said, can I put the dishes away?
The dish dryers are going to be so happy about that because they always complain about having to dry and put away. I don't understand why it's such a big deal. Why is that such a big deal? Like, if it's already in your hand, take 2 steps to the cupboard and put it in the cupboard. No, I just want to put it on the bench. Like, seriously?
So another thing she really hates is having a bath every night. She hates it. I said, you know what? I said, actually, I'm thinking about it. I brought that lavender bubble bath stuff. I think that would be a really good way to signal to your body that it's time to like slow down. How do you feel about having a bath every night? And she went, yeah, that sounds really good. So we are yet to actually put this into action.
Yeah, we've had a busy time since you had the conversation. But tonight, it's going to
But
happen
tonight's the night, and I'm actually really excited about it. We even talked about no TV after dinner, and she's like totally on board. I can't tell you how big of a deal this conversation was and how amazing it was.
So success comes from the 3 E's: explore, explain, empower. You've developed a structure by providing a rationale for why it matters, and then getting her buy-in, getting her commitment, getting her contribution towards making evenings work. It's a win. It's a win all the way around.
There is one caveat.
Yeah.
I promised her that Thursdays was actually a night off from the routine and structure. You and I have a class that we teach, so we're not here, and she usually gets to watch the TV while we're gone. And I said that was okay.
Thursdays is a play as much as you want night.
Yeah.
Okay.
She has one night.
Well, that probably makes her feel really good about life as well.
Yeah.
Okay, after the break, the big win that I've had in a conversation with our kids. Kylie, I didn't ask you, what is the central take-home message from your big win with Emily in terms of putting together an evening structure to get night times working?
It seems ridiculously simple, and it seems like it's literally what we come back to every time. But the 3 E's, explore, explain, empower, are the answer to nearly every challenge that we have with our kids.
3
literally.
E's of effective discipline, hence the name.
It is just so profoundly simple when we get the timing right and when we have emotions in check.
Okay.
If I had have tried to have that conversation with her at nighttime when we're trying to put her to bed, it would have been a disaster. But I picked the right time to sit down with her, explore, explain, and empower. And I'm really looking forward to next week's I'll Do Bed Tomorrow, because we're going to have a great week.
I hope that it works. I just want to emphasize how important it is that when kids understand the rationale, things go so much better. Okay, let's move on to my I'll Do Better Tomorrow. I'm going to make my one fairly quick. We have made quite a big deal on this podcast, and I make a deal on parental guidance. I can't say much, but I do emphasize that in our family, on the first Sunday of every month, we sit down with the kids and we have tough talks. We talk about tricky and sticky situations and what our children can do to be safe and healthy and make wise choices. We've realized that once a month isn't enough. We have a lot of kids, there's a lot of challenges, there's a lot going on. And so what we've done is we've decided that we're going to do it every week. So for the last few weeks on Sundays, we sit down with the kids we promise them that if they will contribute and participate and keep it tight and focused, that will be done in 15 or 20 minutes. That's the promise.
I'm laughing.
Because
not at you.
No.
Because we can't keep it tight and it's not our fault.
No, they can't stay focused. But here's the
Well, it's not even that they can't stay focused. What they actually love is the banter that results from this time together.
Yeah.
And it's really frustrating because you want to get to the point.
Yeah, like let's get this done. We said 20 minutes. You're going to complain.
But it's also really nice.
Totally.
To have them sit there and just be grateful for the time that we have together.
And so a lot of parents will say to me, I don't know how you get to sit. My kids, if I say we're going to sit down and have a tricky talk, they won't even show up. And what you've got to do is you've got to give them good experiences. You've got to make this work for them. And so we absolutely play on the fact that it's only going to be 10 or 20 minutes if the kids play along. And whenever they talk for too long, we're like, well, you were the one that made it go for too long, not us. But they are actually enjoying it. So a couple of weeks ago, I made a big deal here on the podcast about how we talked about emotions and how emotions work. Last week, we talked about turning towards one another rather than turning against and turning away from one another. This week just gone, as a result of I would say a negative experience that one of our daughters had with a guy who could not seem to understand what what no meant and provided a whole lot of unwanted attention. There was nothing catastrophic that occurred. He just he just would not stop putting pressure on our daughter because he has a crush on her and he's clumsy and doesn't understand that no actually means no. So we decided that we would have a consent conversation. You can go to consent.gov.au. I'm an ambassador for the Consent Can't Wait campaign the federal government's running, and you can get a whole lot of resources from that. In this instance, rather than using the resources, we just had a fairly informal chat. And I said to the girls, based on the experience of one of your sisters, they all knew what the experience was and what had happened because we'd talked about it previously. They'd all sort of shared their ideas about it. I said, let's talk about the different ways that things can go wrong here. And I just said, you shout out what you can think of. They said, unwanted attention. They said, how do you respond to pressure? I said, what do you owe somebody when you go out with them? We talked about, you brought up the importance of letting guys take the lead. And then one of the girls said, what are the signs of interest and what are the red flags? And we just had, oh my goodness, the best conversation about consent and dating and boys and relationships. It was just so delightful. On unwanted attention, I said, well, what kind of unwanted attention have you experienced or do your friends talk about? And they said physical touch, invading personal space, getting spammed, like just online. One of them said when people send rude and inappropriate messages. One of them talked about the male gaze, being stared at, checked out. There was harassing friends. There was ignoring requests for space, pressuring, emotional manipulation. Like, I'm sitting there going, we're raising these girls in a world where boys all too often don't get it. If we had sons, I'd be reading this list and I'd be saying, mate, what are you going to do about this? If a girl says she doesn't want your attention, you need to actually honor that. You've got to respect that. And she may actually want your attention more because you've shown her that you know how to honor what she asks for. Anyway, we talked all about all of those things. In terms of responding to pressure, we got a great discussion in about how boys generally tend to be the accelerator, girls are typically the brake. And we talked about how that works and why, rightly or wrongly. I know a lot of people will hear that and be really quite upset and put out by it, but it's the reality. It's what's going on. I brought up the idea that if you go on a date with a guy, you need to be really clear that you do not owe him anything. You don't owe him a handhold or a hug. You don't owe him a kiss, nothing like that. And that's just vitally important that girls know they don't owe a guy anything just because they're on a date. You talked about letting boys take the lead, which I thought was kind of funny because I'm the guy, and yet I'm really happy to chime in and say guys actually want to chase. If it's too easy for a guy, he is not that interested. Like, there has to be some kind of chase and he's got to be taking the lead. And we got to talk about those signs of interest and the red flags. It was just so inspiring. It was such a great conversation. I just want to emphasize, if you've got kids, start these conversations early. I can't believe I just said if you've got kids. Of course you've got kids. You listen to the podcast. Seriously. Start the conversations early, have them often. First Sunday of the month might be enough. We've discovered that it's not enough. We've got so much that we want to explicitly teach our children, that they're not just going to absorb from the ether or from hanging around us. I'm a professional speaker, and it's occurred to me that I give other people better content than I give my own kids. And that's got to change. And so by doing this every Sunday, the kids seem to be really enjoying it. We're enjoying it. And the conversation is just being, how long do you reckon that one went?
Oh, hour and 20.
Yeah, it was nearly 90 minutes.
You know what I loved about that conversation? When you think about the content of what we were talking about, it would be very easy to suggest that an 11-year-old doesn't need to be a part of that. That it's completely irrelevant to her and that it's going to go over her head. But number one, not only did our 11-year-old stay involved in the conversation, she actually provided quite a lot of comic relief as we went through.
She said some funny stuff.
She wanted to be involved and she had an answer to a lot of the questions. And while they were an 11-year-old's viewpoint,
they were appropriate for an 11-year-old. It was great.
They were appropriate. That's right. But secondly, it means now that as she does move into that space where that becomes an issue.
In 17 years.
She's comfortable having these conversations because we're having them regularly.
Right.
This isn't something that we kind of, we end up with a child who has a bad experience and we go, oh, actually, we probably should have this conversation with you. This is about pre-arming them so that they don't find themselves in that position. And if they do, they're empowered to know how to get out.
And come and talk to us about it as well. So we had an 11-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 17-year-old, a 22-year-old, and a friend as well was just happened to be here.
Well,
on
she's
Sunday
been
morning.
to a few and she actually loves them. That's her plan. She wants to be there every week.
She's been to the last couple and she's like, I just want to keep on coming to these chats. I love them. How much fun.
Well, and the great thing about that is just the acknowledgement for her. She's never had that.
Yeah.
She hasn't been in a home where her parents have sat down and had that conversation with her. And so while it's in some ways null and void, she's past those experiences. She's loving the fact that she's watching this unfold in our home and just enjoying being a part of it.
We need to wrap this up. We've talked for way too long. Quick reminder, parental guidance kicks off on Monday night, Channel 9 and 9 Now, 7:30.
I'm stocked up on popcorn.
Yeah. We're going to have a bunch of people around to our place for a parental guidance party. I can't believe I said it like that. Oh, my goodness. I'm so sorry. We really hope you have a great weekend. The take-home message from all of this is really just talk to your kids. You have great conversations. If you can just make the effort, be intentional about it, sit down and talk to your kids. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rullon from Bridge Media. We get all of our admin and research support from Mim Hammonds. If you think that your family might be happier because of this podcast episode, we'd love for you to share it because it'll probably make other families happier as well. Think of a friend that you could just flick this one through to, click a couple of buttons. It'll take, 10 or 20 seconds. Pass it along and help other families to be inspired and find joy and happiness and flourish. If you'd like more information and more resources about making your family happier, you'll find all of it at happyfamilies.com.au.